The metal chair felt cold against Veltar's broken shell. His forearms shook as he sat in the white room. 3 of his arms were real. The 4th was made of cheap metal and wires. It clicked when he moved it. The judges sat across from him. They were from different worlds, different species, but they all had the same look in their eyes: fear. They were afraid of what he might tell them. Veltar looked at his hands. His real hands. They had scars on them, burns from plasma weapons, cuts from human blades. Each scar told a story. Each story was about humans. "Tell us what happened," said the lead judge. She was a Zenthari, blue skin, big eyes. "Tell us about the humans." Veltar's mouth parts clicked. It was hard to talk about. Even now, 3 years after the war ended, he still had nightmares. Dreams about human soldiers. Dreams about their eyes, cold eyes that saw everything. "You want to know about humans?" Veltar asked. "You want to know why we lost the war?" The judges nodded. They had their recording devices ready. They thought they understood war. They thought they knew what fighting meant. They were wrong. "I was a commander," Veltar said. "I led 5,000 soldiers. We were the best troops in the Catherian Empire. We had won every battle for 10 years. We thought we were the best warriors in the galaxy." He paused. His good arms touched the scars on his face. "Then we met humans." The first time Veltar saw a human was on the planet Kepler 442c. It was a small world with 2 moons. The planet had good mining areas. The Catherians wanted it. The humans lived there. "We landed with 3 battle groups," Veltar continued. 15,000 soldiers, the best weapons, the best armor. We thought it would be easy. The humans only had maybe 2,000 people on that world, mostly miners and farmers. The judges wrote notes. They asked questions about numbers and weapons. Veltar answered them, but his mind was somewhere else. His mind was back on that planet, watching human soldiers move through the trees. "The first human I saw was a captain. Her name was Jiwan. She was small, maybe half my size. She carried an old rifle. Nothing special about her weapon. Nothing that should have scared us." Veltar remembered that day clearly. Too clearly. His troops had just finished destroying a human settlement. They thought they had won. They were celebrating when the shooting started. "Jiwan killed 12 of my soldiers in 30 seconds, Veltar said. "She used the smoke from burning buildings to hide. She knew exactly where to shoot. Our armor meant nothing to her. She hit the weak spots every time." The Zenthari judge leaned forward. "How did she know about your armor's weak points?" "That's what I asked too," Veltar replied. "Later I found out. The humans had been watching us for months. They studied everything, our armor, our weapons, our tactics. They knew us better than we knew ourselves." Veltar's metal arm clicked as he gestured. "But it wasn't just knowledge. Humans fight different. We fight with honor. We follow rules. We announce our attacks. Humans? They do whatever works." He remembered the confusion in his ranks. Catherian soldiers were trained to fight other Catherians. They expected certain behaviors. They expected enemies to act with honor. Humans didn't care about honor. They cared about winning. There was a lieutenant with Jiwan. His name was Minho. He looked even younger than her. I watched him take out one of our tanks with a metal pipe and some explosives he made from farm chemicals. The judges looked at each other. They didn't understand how a primitive explosive could stop a tank. Veltar had wondered the same thing. "Human weapons weren't better than ours," he explained. "But humans were better at using them. They were creative. They thought of things we never considered. They turned everything into a weapon." Veltar closed his eyes. He could still see Minho's face, young, calm, focused. The human had looked at him through the tank's viewing port just before the explosion. There was no anger in his eyes, no hate, just cold calculation. "After the tank exploded, my soldiers panicked. We had never lost a tank to infantry before. We didn't know what to do, but the humans knew exactly what to do next. The human soldiers had used the confusion to attack from multiple directions. They moved like they had practiced this exact situation many times. Every soldier knew their job. They worked together like parts of a machine. In 15 minutes, we went from hunters to prey, Veltar said. 15 minutes. That's all it took for humans to turn our victory into our defeat, the lead judge asked. About casualties, numbers, statistics. But Veltar knew the real numbers didn't matter. What mattered was what those 15 minutes taught him about humans. We retreated, he admitted. 3 battle groups retreated from 2,000 humans. When I reported this to command, they didn't believe me. They thought I was lying. They thought humans were just primitive creatures who got lucky. Veltar laughed. It was not a happy sound. Lucky. That's what they called it. But I knew better. I had seen Jiwan's eyes. I had watched Minho work. These weren't lucky primitives. These were predators, and we were their prey. The room was quiet for a moment. The judges were thinking about what he had said. They were trying to understand how advanced aliens could lose to primitive humans. That was just the beginning, Veltar continued. That first battle was nothing compared to what came later. Humans learned from every fight. They got better, faster, smarter. He looked at his metal arm again. They broke us in pieces, not with better weapons or bigger armies. They broke us by thinking different, by fighting different, by being different. The Zenthari judge cleared her throat. You said this was just the beginning. Tell us about the rest. Veltar nodded slowly. His shell ached from old wounds. His mind ached from old memories. The rest? The rest was worse, much worse, because after that first battle, humans knew they could beat us. And once humans know they can win, nothing can stop them. Nothing. He paused and looked at each judge in turn. You want to understand the war? You want to know why we surrendered? It wasn't because humans were stronger. It was because humans were human. And that was enough. The recording devices kept running. The judges kept writing notes, but Veltar could see it in their faces. They were beginning to understand, beginning to see why the mighty Catherian Empire had fallen to a species that still used chemical rockets. Humans were different, and different was dangerous. Should I continue? Veltar asked. The judges nodded. They wanted to hear more. They needed to hear more. Veltar took a deep breath and prepared to tell them about the real horror. The horror of fighting, an enemy that thought like no other species in the galaxy. The horror of fighting humans. Veltar's good hands gripped the edge of the table. The metal was cold, but not as cold as the memory he was about to share. The judges waited. They had heard about human tactics, but they didn't really understand yet. They would. After the first battle, command sent me back, Veltar said. They gave me more soldiers, better weapons. They told me to finish what we started. They said humans just got lucky. The Zenthari judge wrote something on her pad. How many soldiers did they give you? 10,000, plus orbital support, plus air units. We had everything we needed to crush a primitive world. Veltar's mandibles clicked with bitter memory. Everything except understanding. He remembered standing on the command ship, looking down at Kepler 442c. The planet looked peaceful from space, green and blue with white clouds. It looked like an easy target. It looked like nothing that could threaten the Catherian Empire. I should have known better, Veltar continued. The first battle should have taught me, but I was a good soldier. I followed orders. I thought numbers would be enough. The second landing was different from the first. Veltar brought his full force down on the main human settlement, 10,000 soldiers in full battle gear, air support circling overhead, artillery ready to fire. The settlement was empty. Not a single human, Veltar said. They had abandoned their homes, left everything behind. At first, I thought they were running away. I thought they were scared. His metal arm clicked as he gestured. I was wrong. They weren't running away. They were planning. Veltar ordered his troops to spread out and search for the humans. Standard procedure. His soldiers moved in battle formations across the settlement. They checked every building, every tunnel, every possible hiding place. That's when they met Hyuna. Staff Sergeant Hyuna was her name, Veltar said. I never saw her face during the battle, but I heard her name on the radio, over and over. My soldiers kept screaming it. Hyuna had been waiting for them. She knew exactly how Catherian soldiers would search the settlement. She knew they would split up into small groups. She knew they would follow standard procedures. She used that knowledge to kill them. The first group found her in the school building, Veltar continued. 5 soldiers, elite troops. They went in with full scanners, full armor, full weapons. 3 minutes later, they were all dead. The judges looked confused. How could one human kill 5 elite alien soldiers? Hyuna didn't use advanced weapons, Veltar explained. She used human weapons, bullets, explosives, traps, simple things. But she used them in ways we never expected. Veltar remembered listening to the radio chatter. His soldiers were trained warriors, but they sounded scared, confused. They couldn't understand how their target kept disappearing and reappearing. Hyuna knew the building better than my soldiers did. She had prepared it, prepared every room, every hallway, every exit. When my troops entered, they weren't walking into a building. They were walking into a weapon. The human had turned the entire school into a trap. She used the walls for cover, the ceiling for movement, the floor for hiding explosives. She fought like the building was part of her body. My soldiers tried to surround the building, Veltar said. Standard tactic. But Hyuna wasn't in the building anymore. She was already moving to her next position. While his troops focused on the school, Hyuna had moved to the medical center 2 blocks away. She waited for the next patrol to arrive. When they did, she killed them too. 7 more dead, Veltar said. Same method, same result. 1 human, multiple dead Catherians. The pattern continued all day. Hyuna would appear, kill a few soldiers, then disappear. She never fought fair. She never gave his troops a chance to use their superior numbers or weapons. She fought like a ghost. I brought in air support, Veltar continued. Attack ships, heavy weapons. We bombed every building Hyuna had used, turned them to rubble. The bombing stopped the attacks for a while. Veltar thought he had won. His forces regrouped and prepared to search the rubble for Hyuna's body. They never found it. That night, Hyuna hit our camp, Veltar said. His voice got quieter. The memories still hurt. She got past all our guards, past all our sensors, past all our defenses. Hyuna had infiltrated their camp while they slept. She moved between the tents like a shadow. She placed explosives on vehicles. She cut communication lines. She killed sentries without making a sound. When the explosions started, we thought we were under attack from a full army, Veltar said. Soldiers ran everywhere. Officers shouted orders. Everyone was confused. In the chaos, Hyuna disappeared again. But the damage was done. She had destroyed half their vehicles and killed 30 more soldiers. 1 human had crippled an entire battle group. The next morning, I found a message, Veltar said, written in perfect Catherian script on my command tent. It said, "This is just the beginning." The judges looked at each other. They were starting to understand. This wasn't just military tactics. This was psychological warfare. How did she know your language? Asked the lead judge. That's what scared me most, Veltar replied. Humans study everything. They learn everything. They prepare for everything. Hyuna had probably been learning our language for years, just in case. Veltar remembered staring at that message for a long time. The writing was perfect, better than most Catherians could manage. It meant humans had been planning this war long, before it started. I called for reinforcements, he continued. More soldiers, more weapons, more everything. Command was angry, but they sent what I asked for. The reinforcements arrived 3 days later. 5,000 more troops, heavy artillery, elite commando units. Enough firepower to destroy a planet. It didn't matter. Hyuna had friends, Veltar said simply. During the 3 days he waited for reinforcements, more humans had joined the battle. They came from other settlements, from hidden bases, from places his scouts had never found. Private Do-hyun was one of them, Veltar said. He specialized in engineering, construction, building things. Do-hyun had been busy while Veltar waited for help. The human had been preparing the battlefield, setting traps, creating ambush points, turning the entire area into a killing ground. When my reinforcements landed, Do-hyun was ready for them, Veltar continued. He had prepared the perfect welcome. The landing zone looked safe, flat ground, good visibility, no obvious threats. Veltar's new troops landed their ships and began unloading equipment. That's when Do-hyun triggered his trap. The entire landing zone collapsed, Veltar said. Do-hyun had dug tunnels underneath. Weeks of work. When he collapsed them, half my reinforcements fell into the ground. The trap was beautiful in its simplicity. Do-hyun had used human engineering knowledge to create a massive sinkhole. No advanced weapons, no alien technology, just careful planning and hard work. 3,000 soldiers. Gone in 30 seconds, Veltar said. Buried alive or crushed by their own ships. The survivors tried to dig out their trapped comrades. While they were distracted, Hyuna and her team attacked again. More hit-and-run tactics, more dead Catherians. That's when I realized the truth, Veltar said. We weren't fighting human soldiers, we were fighting human intelligence, and human intelligence was something we couldn't beat. The judges were quiet now. They were beginning to understand what Veltar had learned on that planet. Humans didn't just fight with weapons, they fought with their minds. What happened next? Asked the Zenthari judge. Veltar looked at his metal arm. He flexed the artificial fingers, listening to them click. Next I learned that humans had more than just intelligence. They had something worse. He paused, gathering strength for the next part of his story. They had creativity. The room grew colder as Veltar prepared to tell the next part of his story. His 3 real arms trembled slightly. The judges noticed. They had seen many war veterans, but none had shaken like this when talking about their enemies. You think you understand warfare, Veltar said to the judges. You think war is about weapons and tactics and numbers, but humans taught me something different. They taught me that war is about the mind. The lead judge adjusted her recording device. What do you mean? I mean humans don't just fight your body, Veltar replied. They fight your soul. After the disaster with the reinforcements, Veltar had regrouped his remaining forces. Less than 3,000 soldiers left from his original 15,000. They had set up a defensive position in the hills outside the human settlement. It should have been safe. High ground. Good visibility. Clear fields of fire. Everything the military textbooks said to do. The humans didn't care about textbooks. The first night in our new position, we heard music, Veltar said. The judges looked confused. Music? In a war zone? Human music, Veltar explained. Corporal Sunmi was broadcasting it on our communication channels. She had hacked into our radio system somehow. All night long, strange human songs played in our helmets. Veltar remembered that music clearly. It was unlike anything Catherians had ever heard. Some songs were fast and loud, others were slow and sad. All of them were alien, disturbing. My soldiers couldn't turn it off, he continued. Sunmi had locked our radios somehow. We had to listen, all night, every night. The music got into their heads. Catherian brains weren't designed to process human sounds. The melodies didn't make sense. The rhythms were wrong. The voices sang in languages no Cytherian understood. After 3 nights, soldiers started having breakdowns, Veltar said. They couldn't sleep, couldn't concentrate. Some started hearing the music even when the radios were off. The psychological assault was subtle but effective. Humans weren't trying to drive Cytherians insane. They were just wearing them down, making them tired, confused, less effective. I tried to find Sunmi, Veltar continued. Sent out hunting, parties, elite trackers, the best soldiers I had left. They never found her. Sunmi was like a ghost in the radio waves. She could access their communications from anywhere. Sometimes the music came from the north, sometimes from the south. Sometimes it seemed to come from inside their own base. On the 4th night, the music stopped, Veltar said. Complete silence. My soldiers were so used to the noise that the quiet felt worse than the songs. That's when Sunmi started the 2nd phase of her attack. She began talking to us, Veltar explained. Personal messages. She knew our names, our ranks, details about our families back home. The judges shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This was getting disturbing. How did she know personal information about your soldiers? Asked the Zenthari judge. Humans study everything, Veltar replied. They had intercepted our personal communications for months. They knew who we were, who we cared about, what we feared. Sunmi used that knowledge like a weapon. She would whisper to individual soldiers during the night shift, tell them stories about their families, ask them questions about their lives, pretend to be their friend. She never threatened anyone, Veltar said. Never made demands. She just talked. Like she cared about my soldiers. That made it worse. Threats would have been normal, understandable. But this false kindness confused the Cytherian troops. They didn't know how to respond to an enemy who acted friendly. Some soldiers started talking back, Veltar admitted. They were lonely, scared, far from home. Sunmi was the only one who seemed to understand. The conversations got longer each night. Sunmi would ask about Cytherian culture, about their homeworld, about why they were fighting. She sounded genuinely interested, genuinely concerned. I realized what she was doing, Veltar said. She wasn't just gathering intelligence. She was making my soldiers think, making them question the war. This was warfare beyond anything in Cytherian military doctrine. They had weapons for destroying bodies, tactics for defeating armies, but they had no defense against someone who attacked thoughts and feelings. Then Sergeant Jaehyun joined the psychological assault, Veltar continued. Jaehyun's approach was different from Sunmi's. Where she used kindness, he used knowledge. Perfect, terrible knowledge. I found his first message carved into a tree near our camp, Veltar said, written in flawless Cytherian script. It said, tomorrow at sunrise, you will lose 12 soldiers to sniper fire. The first will be your communications officer. Veltar had thought it was a bluff, psychological intimidation. He posted extra guards and changed patrol patterns. But when sunrise came, the predictions started coming true. The communications officer died at exactly sunrise, Veltar said. Single shot to the head, then another soldier 5 minutes later, then another. Jaehyun wasn't just predicting what would happen. He was making it happen. Each death followed his timeline exactly, as if he was conducting a deadly orchestra. By noon, 12 soldiers were dead, Veltar continued, just like he promised. That night they found another message. This one predicted tomorrow's casualties. 20 soldiers, starting with the medical officer, including specific times and causes of death. I tried everything to stop it, Veltar said. Changed patrol schedules, moved positions, put everyone in bunkers. Nothing worked. Jaehyun's predictions kept coming true, not because he could see the future, but because he understood Cytherian military procedures perfectly. He knew how they would react to his messages. He planned his attacks around their responses. The messages got more detailed, Veltar said. Jae-hyun started including personal notes. He knew which soldiers had families, which ones were afraid, which ones were ready to give up. The psychological pressure was unbearable. Every day brought new predictions, new deaths, new evidence that humans could see inside Catherian minds. My soldiers stopped following orders, Veltar admitted. They were too scared to leave the bunkers, too scared to sleep, too scared to think. The humans had broken his army without destroying it. His soldiers were alive but useless. Their weapons still worked, but their will to fight was gone. That's when I understood the real horror, Veltar said. Humans don't just win battles. They win minds. They make you defeat yourself. The judges were taking notes frantically now. This was beyond their understanding of warfare. This was something new and terrifying. How many soldiers did you lose to this psychological warfare? Asked one judge. None, Veltar replied. That was the beauty of it. Sunmi and Jae-hyun didn't have to kill anyone. They just had to make my soldiers afraid to fight. He paused and looked at his artificial arm again. The physical casualties came later, when humans showed us what they could do with broken minds and perfect knowledge. The room was completely quiet now. The judges were beginning to understand why the Catherian Empire had lost the war. They weren't just fighting human soldiers. They were fighting human psychology. What happened next? The lead judge asked quietly. Veltar's mandibles clicked with dark memory. Next, humans showed me their greatest weapon. Not their guns or ships or bombs. Their greatest weapon was understanding. They understood us better than we understood ourselves. He looked up at the judges with eyes that had seen too much. And once humans understand you, you're already dead. Veltar stared at the ceiling for a moment before continuing. The judges could see pain in his compound eyes, not physical pain from his old wounds, but something deeper, the pain of remembering impossible things. After Sunmi and Jae-hyun broke. My soldiers' minds, I called for evacuation, Veltar said. I told command we needed to retreat, regroup, find a new strategy. The Zenthari judge looked up from her notes. What did your command say? They said no, Veltar replied simply. They said retreat was not acceptable. They sent me new orders, new objectives, and new troops. Command had decided the problem was leadership. They blamed Veltar for the failures. They sent fresh officers to take control of the operation, young, eager commanders who had never fought humans before. Major, Seulgi was one of them, Veltar said. She arrived with 2,000 troops and absolute confidence. She thought she understood warfare. Seulgi had studied the reports from Veltar's battles. She thought she knew what mistakes had been made. She had plans to fix everything, new tactics, better coordination, stronger discipline. She lasted 6 hours, Veltar said. The judges looked shocked. 6 hours? Against primitive humans? Seulgi brought anti-aircraft weapons, Veltar continued. Heavy guns designed to shoot down enemy ships. She thought humans might have hidden aircraft somewhere. It was a reasonable precaution. Air superiority was crucial in modern warfare. If humans had flying machines, they needed to be stopped. The first thing Seulgi did was set up her anti-aircraft guns in a defensive perimeter, Veltar said. Standard doctrine, good positions, overlapping fields of fire, everything by the book. What Seulgi didn't understand was that humans didn't follow books. They wrote their own rules as they went. The attack came from underground, Veltar continued. Humans had been digging tunnels for weeks. They came up right in the middle of our anti-aircraft positions. But the humans who emerged from the tunnels weren't carrying anti-personnel weapons. They were carrying parts, pieces of machinery, scrap, metal, random electronics. At first, my soldiers laughed, Veltar admitted. These humans looked like repair workers, not soldiers. They didn't even have proper weapons. The laughter stopped when the humans started building something. In 30 minutes, they had assembled a working anti-aircraft gun, Veltar said. using parts from our own destroyed vehicles and salvaged electronics from the settlement. The judges exchanged glances. This seemed impossible. "You're saying humans built weapons from scrap metal?" asked one judge. "Not just weapons," Veltar replied. "Better weapons. Their improvised gun was more accurate than our manufactured ones." Sulgi had watched in amazement as the humans worked. They didn't have blueprints or plans. They just understood how machines worked, how to take pieces from different systems and make them work together. The human leading the construction was Captain Tae-hyung, Veltar continued. "He looked at our anti-aircraft gun for maybe 10 seconds. Then he started pulling parts off it. Tae-hyung had identified weaknesses in the Catherian design immediately, problems that Catherian engineers had never noticed. He fixed them using human solutions. When he was done, our gun could track faster, fire more accurately, and reload quicker than the original," Veltar said. "He had improved our own technology using spare parts and human thinking. This was something no Catherian military planner had considered. They had prepared for human weapons, human tactics, human strategies. They had never prepared for human creativity." Seulgi tried to destroy the improvised gun, Veltar continued. "She sent her best soldiers to attack the human position. The attack failed, not because of superior human firepower, but because of superior human adaptation. The moment Sulgi's soldiers moved, the humans changed their plans. Taehyung's team didn't just defend their gun," Veltar said. "They started building more weapons, different weapons, weapons designed specifically to stop Catherian attacks. While under fire, the humans had analyzed the attacking troops. They identified weak points in Catherian armor, gaps in tactical formations, problems with communication systems. They built weapons to exploit each weakness," Veltar continued. "Custom solutions for custom problems, all in the middle of a battle. Within an hour, Tae-hyung had created an entire weapons system from battlefield salvage. Anti-personnel guns made from mining equipment, communications jammers built from entertainment electronics, armor-piercing projectiles crafted from industrial tools. Every weapon was designed to fight us specifically," Veltar said. "Not general combat weapons, weapons made to kill Catherians. This kind of rapid adaptation was beyond anything in Catherian military experience. Their enemies usually fought with standard weapons and standard tactics, predictable patterns, known capabilities. Humans created new capabilities during battle. Seulgi called for air support," Veltar continued. "She had fighter ships in orbit, the best pilots in the fleet. The airstrike should have ended the engagement quickly. Orbital bombardment was precise and overwhelming. No ground-based force could survive direct hits from military spacecraft. Tae-hyung shot down 3 fighters with his improvised anti-aircraft gun," Veltar said. "The gun he built from scrap in 30 minutes. The remaining pilots retreated in confusion. Their ships were military-grade, built in the finest factories in the galaxy. They couldn't understand how human garbage could threaten them. That's when I realized what we were really fighting," Veltar said. "We weren't fighting human technology. We were fighting human minds. The difference was crucial. Technology could be countered with better technology, but minds could think of new solutions instantly. They could adapt to any situation. Selgi made her final mistake that afternoon," Veltar continued. "She tried to negotiate," Selgi had called, "for a temporary ceasefire. She wanted to talk to the human commanders. Maybe find a peaceful solution to the conflict. It seemed reasonable. She met with Captain Tae-hyung under a white flag," Veltar said. "Standard diplomatic protocol, safe meeting. Both sides agreed to hold their fire." But while Seulgi talked, Tae-hyung continued working. Even during negotiations, his mind was solving problems, creating new options, planning new solutions. During the 30-minute ceasefire, he built a communications interceptor, Veltar said, right there in the meeting tent, using parts from Solgi's own equipment. The device looked like innocent electronics, scanner parts, radio components, nothing threatening, Seulgi didn't even notice what he was doing. When the meeting ended, Taehyung had access to our entire communications network, Veltar continued. He could hear every order, every report, every conversation. That night, the humans attacked with perfect coordination. They knew exactly where every Catherian soldier was positioned. They knew patrol schedules, supply routes, command procedures. Seulgi's force was destroyed in 2 hours, Veltar said. 2,000 soldiers, gone. The judges were writing furiously now. This was beyond their understanding of combat capabilities. How many humans were in this attack? Asked the lead judge. Maybe 50, Veltar replied. But they fought like they had perfect intelligence about our positions and plans, because they did. Taehyung's interceptor had given them everything they needed. But more than that, they had the ability to use that intelligence instantly. Other species would have spent days planning an attack with that much information, Veltar continued. Humans planned and executed their assault in hours. This was the real horror of fighting humans. It wasn't their weapons or their numbers. It was their ability to think faster than their enemies, to adapt quicker than anyone could. Respond. After Selgi's defeat, I finally understood, Veltar said. We were fighting an enemy that got stronger during battle. Every mistake we made taught them something new. Every weapon we used became a tool they could copy and improve. He looked directly at the judges. How do you fight an enemy that learns from defeat? How do you beat someone who gets better every time you hurt them? The judges had no answer. You don't, Veltar said simply. You just hope they show mercy. Veltar's artificial arm made small clicking sounds as he adjusted his position in the chair. The judges noticed he was getting more agitated as his story progressed. The memories were getting worse. After losing Sulgi and her troops, High Command finally understood, Veltar said. This wasn't a local problem. This was a species-wide threat. The judges leaned forward. Now they were getting to the real war, the big battles, the ones that determined the fate of entire civilizations. They sent me to Zerion Prime, Veltar continued. Our fortress world, the most defended planet in the Catherian Empire. Zerion Prime was supposed to be unbeatable, massive defensive installations, shield generators that could stop planet-killer weapons, underground cities that could survive orbital bombardment, 1 million soldiers with the best equipment money could buy. I was given command of the entire defense force, Veltar said. 1 million troops, 10,000 vehicles, 500 aircraft, everything we needed to stop any invasion. The planet had been fortified for over a century. Every hill had gun emplacements. Every valley had missile launchers. Every approach was covered by overlapping fields of fire. Military engineers had spent decades making it perfect. The humans arrived with 50 ships, Veltar said. Maybe 20,000 soldiers total. We outnumbered them 50-1. The judges looked confused. Those numbers didn't make sense. How could such a small force threaten a fortress world? That's what I thought too, Veltar replied. I prepared for a siege, standard procedure, wait for them to attack our defenses. Let our superior numbers and weapons destroy them. Veltar had positioned his forces according to military doctrine. Strong points defended, supply lines secured, communications established. Everything by the book. The human commander was Colonel Nari, he continued. She didn't attack our defenses. She didn't even try to land troops on the planet. Instead, Nari did something no Catherian strategist had ever considered. She waited. For 2 weeks, the human fleet just sat in orbit, Veltar said. They didn't shoot. They didn't move. They just watched. At first, Veltar thought they were planning something, gathering intelligence, preparing for a massive assault. He kept his forces on high alert, ready for anything. Nothing happened. My soldiers started getting nervous, Veltar continued. They were ready to fight. But the humans wouldn't give them a fight. They just waited. The psychological effect was subtle but powerful. Catherian troops were trained for action. They wanted to do something. Fight someone. win something. But the humans gave them nothing to fight against. After a month, I realized what Nari was doing, Veltar said. She was studying us, learning our patterns, our schedules, our weaknesses. Every day, the human ships moved slightly, different positions, different angles. They were mapping the planet's defenses, not with active sensors that could be detected, but with passive observation, patient watching. They learned everything, Veltar continued. Guard rotations, supply deliveries, communication schedules. The humans knew our routine better than we did, but knowledge alone wasn't enough to defeat. A fortress world. The defenses were too strong, the forces too numerous. Even perfect intelligence couldn't overcome such overwhelming disadvantages, unless the humans found a different way to win. Commander Jihoon led the first real attack, Veltar said. But it wasn't against our military forces. Jihoon had brought a small team to the planet's surface. They avoided all military installations. They didn't engage any troops. They went after civilian infrastructure, power stations, water treatment plants, communication networks, Veltar listed. Not military targets, things that kept the planet running. The attacks were precise and devastating, small explosions that caused maximum disruption. Jihoon's team knew exactly which systems to target for greatest effect. They cut power to our northern defense grid, Veltar continued. Not permanently, just for 6 hours, but that was enough. While the northern defenses were offline, other human teams infiltrated the area. They planted monitoring devices, sabotage, equipment, intelligence-gathering tools. When power was restored, we thought we had won, Veltar said. The human attack had failed. Our defenses were intact, but the humans hadn't been trying to destroy anything permanently. They had been installing access points, ways to control Catherian systems remotely. Over the next month, small failures started happening everywhere, Veltar continued. Communications would go down for a few minutes. Sensors would malfunction, briefly. Nothing major, just minor problems. Each small failure was carefully timed, coordinated with human intelligence gathering. When a sensor went offline, human scouts would move through the blind spot. When communications failed, human infiltrators would plant more devices. We were being colonized from the inside, Veltar realized. The humans were turning our own infrastructure against us. Jihoon's strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of fighting the fortress, he was becoming part of it. Every system the humans accessed became a weapon they could use. Then Specialist Yunha joined the cyber warfare, Veltar said. Yunha was different from the other human soldiers. She didn't carry weapons or plant explosives. She fought with computers and communication systems. She hacked into our defense network, Veltar continued. Not to destroy it, to control it. Yuna had used Jihoon's access points to penetrate deeper into Catherian computer systems. She learned their programming languages, their security protocols, their operational procedures. She started small, Veltar said, changing patrol routes slightly, delaying supply shipments by a few hours, minor adjustments that looked like clerical errors. But the small changes added up. Patrols would arrive at checkpoints to find them, already occupied by other patrols. Supply convoys would get lost following incorrect routes. Guard shifts would change at wrong times, leaving positions temporarily unmanned. My soldiers started making mistakes, Veltar continued. They were following orders from their own computers, but the orders were wrong. Yunha had turned their strength into weakness. The sophisticated computer systems that coordinated their defense had become tools for human infiltration. The worst part was that we couldn't stop using the computers, Veltar said. The planet was too big, the forces too numerous. We needed electronic coordination. Every order they gave through the system was monitored by Yunha. Every plan they made was known to the humans. Every movement they planned was anticipated. She was fighting us with our own efficiency, Veltar realized. The better our systems worked, the more control she had. The siege continued for months. No major battles, no decisive engagements, just slow, steady pressure as humans took more control of Cytherian systems. My soldiers started fighting each other, Veltar said quietly. Conflicting orders from compromised systems, units arriving at the same positions at the same time, supply problems causing shortages and arguments. The perfect fortress world was destroying itself, not from human attacks, but from human-induced confusion. The million-man army was becoming its own worst enemy. I tried to go to manual systems, Veltar continued. Written orders, face-to-face communications, old-fashioned military procedures. But it was too late. The army was too big and too complex for manual coordination. Without computers, they couldn't function as a unified force. That's when Nari made her final move, Veltar said. She didn't attack our defenses. She offered to fix our computers. The human colonel had sent a message directly to Cytherian High Command. She explained that human specialists could repair the technical problems plaguing Xerion Prime. They could restore order to the chaos for a price, Veltar added grimly. The price was surrender, complete and unconditional. The Cytherian Empire would submit to human authority. In exchange, humans would restore order to their systems. High Command refused, of course, Veltar said. They ordered me to fight to the last soldier, but his soldiers were already fighting each other, fighting their own equipment, fighting the chaos that humans had created in their perfect fortress. That's when I learned the final lesson about human warfare, Veltar concluded. They don't destroy their enemies, they make their enemies destroy themselves. The judges were silent for a long moment, processing what they had heard. How did the siege end? Asked the lead judge finally. Veltar's compound eyes reflected old pain. It ended with mercy, he said. Terrible, horrible mercy. The judges noticed that Veltar had stopped moving his artificial arm. He held it completely still, as if the memory he was about to share had frozen part of him forever. You want to know about betrayal? Veltar asked quietly. Real betrayal? It's not when your enemies stab you in the back. It's when you discover they were standing next to you all along. The lead judge adjusted her recording device. What do you mean? I mean humans had been living among us for years, Veltar replied. In our cities, in our homes, in our military, learning everything about us while we thought we understood them. This revelation hit the judges like a physical blow. Infiltration was one thing, but long-term, deep-cover infiltration suggested a level of planning that was truly frightening. The first one we discovered was Agent Yuna, Veltar continued. She had been working as a researcher in our xenobiology department for 3 years. Yuna wasn't just any researcher. She was a senior scientist, someone with access to classified military information, someone trusted with the Empire's most sensitive secrets. She had perfect documentation, Veltar said. Complete family history going back generations, medical records, educational transcripts, everything checked out. The Cytherian security services were thorough. They had investigated every person working on sensitive projects. Yuna had passed every background check with perfect scores. Because humans had created her identity from scratch, Veltar explained. Not forged documents, real documents. They had hacked into our systems years ago and built her entire life story in our own databases. The scope of the deception was staggering. Humans hadn't just stolen information. They had rewritten history, created false memories in Cytherian. Computers. made their agent more real than reality. Una had been feeding intelligence to human forces from the beginning, Veltar continued. Every defensive plan, every troop movement, every technological development, she knew it all. But the intelligence gathering was just the beginning. Una had also been influencing Catharian research, steering projects in directions that helped humans, subtly sabotaging efforts that might have given Catharians an advantage. She guided our weapon development programs, Veltar said, made sure we focused on the wrong technologies, built defenses against threats that didn't exist while ignoring real human capabilities. The judges were taking frantic notes. This was beyond espionage. This was systematic manipulation of an entire civilization's military development. "How did you discover her?" asked one judge. "We didn't," Veltar replied. "She revealed herself." During the siege of Zerion Prime, when Catharian forces were struggling with their compromised computer systems, Una had made an offer. She claimed to have developed a solution to their cyber warfare problems. She said she had been working on defensive protocols, Veltar continued. Security systems that could protect us from human hackers. Una's offer had seemed like salvation, a way to restore order to their chaotic systems. She had presented detailed technical plans that looked convincing to Catharian engineers. "I approved her program," Veltar admitted. "I was desperate. My forces were falling apart. Her solution seemed perfect. The installation of Una's security protocols had gone smoothly. The chaotic glitches in their systems stopped. Communications became reliable again. Order was restored to the fortress world. For exactly 6 hours, Veltar said bitterly. Then, every system on Zerion Prime had shut down simultaneously. Not malfunction, complete shutdown, power grids, communications, weapons, life support. Everything stopped working at the same moment. That's when Una announced who she really was, Veltar continued. Her voice came through every speaker on the planet. Perfect Catharian accent, flawless grammar. She sounded more like us than we did. Una had explained her true identity calmly and professionally. She was a human intelligence officer. She had been living as a Catharian for 3 years. She had been feeding information to human forces throughout the war. She thanked us for our hospitality, Veltar said. Actually thanked us. Like we had invited her to our planet for a vacation. But Una wasn't the only human infiltrator. She was just the first to reveal herself. Lieutenant Dongwook had been serving in our military for 2 years, Veltar continued. Communications officer, perfect service record, highly decorated. Dongwook had been intercepting and redirecting Catharian military communications throughout the war. Orders that should have gone to frontline troops went to supply units instead. Intelligence reports went to the wrong commanders. Critical information disappeared into electronic dead ends. He had been conducting an entire shadow campaign, Veltar said, using our own communication systems to coordinate human attacks. The most devastating part was how natural it had seemed. Military communications were always complex. Messages got delayed or misdirected regularly. Dongwook's sabotage looked like normal bureaucratic confusion. He spoke perfect Catharian, Veltar continued. Better than most native speakers, he understood our military culture, our traditions, our honor codes. Dongwook had used that cultural knowledge to manipulate Catherian officers. He knew exactly how to phrase orders to make them sound authentic, how to appeal to Catherian pride and honor to make them follow his redirected commands. When he revealed himself, he did it in perfect military fashion, Veltar said. Formal announcement, proper protocol. He surrendered his commission with full ceremony. The judges were struggling to process this information. These weren't just spies. These were humans who had become Catherians. Who understood the species better than the species understood itself? "How many infiltrators were there?" asked the Zenthari judge. "We never found out," Veltar replied. Yuna and Dongwook were just the ones who chose to reveal themselves. There could have been dozens more, hundreds more. We had no way to know. This was the deepest psychological wound. The knowledge that anyone could be human, any colleague, any friend, any family member. The paranoia had spread through Catherian society like a plague. Trust broke down completely, Veltar continued. Soldiers wouldn't follow orders from officers they didn't know personally. Scientists wouldn't share research with colleagues. Families suspected each other. The human infiltration had achieved something military attacks never could. It had destroyed Catherian social cohesion, made them afraid of their own species. But the worst part wasn't the deception, Veltar said. The worst part was how well they fit in. Yuna had been popular among her colleagues. She was brilliant, helpful, friendly. People had enjoyed working with her. She had genuine friends who cared about her. Dongwook had been dating a Catherian officer, Veltar continued. They were planning to get married. She loved him, really loved him. The relationships had been real, even if the identities were false. Humans hadn't just pretended to care about Catherians. In many cases, they actually had cared. That made the betrayal even more painful. When Yuna revealed herself, her colleagues were heartbroken, Veltar said. Not angry, heartbroken. They had lost a friend, not just discovered an enemy. This emotional manipulation was perhaps the cruelest weapon in the human arsenal. They had made Catherians care about them, then revealed that caring as weakness. The final message came from someone we never identified, Veltar continued. A voice that spoke through our communication systems for just 1 minute. The unknown human had addressed the entire Catherian population, not with threats or demands, but with an apology. A sincere, heartfelt apology for the deception. They said they were sorry for lying to us, Veltar said. Sorry for betraying our trust. Sorry for hurting people they had come to consider friends. But the apology came with a warning. The infiltration was ending because the war was ending. Catherians could surrender now with dignity or continue fighting and face complete destruction. The choice is yours, Veltar quoted from memory. We hope you choose wisely. The judges sat in stunned silence. This was beyond warfare. This was psychological dominance on a civilizational scale. What did you do? Asked the lead judge finally. Veltar looked at his artificial arm. The arm he had lost in the final battle. The battle that had taught him the last most terrible lesson about fighting humans. We chose to keep fighting, he said. and learned why that was the wrong choice. The room had grown completely silent except for the soft hum of recording devices. Veltar sat perfectly still, his artificial arm motionless on the table. The judges waited for him to continue, but he seemed lost in memories too painful to speak. Finally, the lead judge prompted him gently. "You said forgiveness was the worst part. What did you mean?" Veltar's mandibles clicked slowly, as if he was trying to find words for something impossible to describe. "You have to understand," he began. "We were ready for punishment. We expected execution, slavery, torture. We had lost the war completely. We deserved whatever humans wanted to do to us." The judges nodded. This was how wars normally ended. Winners took everything from losers: resources, territory, dignity. It was the natural order of things. "But humans didn't want anything from us," Veltar continued. "They just wanted us to stop fighting." The formal surrender had taken place on Earth, in a simple conference room. No grand ceremony, no humiliation. Rituals. No displays of human superiority, just paperwork and handshakes. "General Borum treated our negotiators like honored guests," Veltar said. "She served them tea, asked about their families, made small talk about weather on their homeworlds." This casual friendliness had confused the Catherian delegation more than any threat could have. They had prepared for anger, demands, ultimatums. Instead, they got polite conversation. "The surrender terms were simple," Veltar continued. "Stop fighting. Allow human observers on our worlds. Begin trade negotiations." That was it. The judges looked skeptical. These terms seemed impossibly generous for a total military victory. "What about reparations?" asked one judge. "Territory, resources, military restrictions?" "Nothing," Veltar replied. "Humans asked for nothing. They said the war had cost everyone enough already. Instead of taking from the Catherian Empire, humans had started giving to it. Medical technology to heal war wounds, agricultural assistance to replace destroyed farms, engineering help to rebuild damaged infrastructure. They treated us like we were allies who had just survived a natural disaster." "Together," Veltar said, "not like defeated enemies." The psychological impact of this generosity had been devastating. Catherian society had been prepared for occupation, oppression, and exploitation. They didn't know how to handle kindness. Many soldiers couldn't accept it, Veltar continued. They thought it was a trick, a trap. They kept waiting for humans to reveal their real intentions. But the real intentions never changed. Humans genuinely wanted to help their former enemies recover from the war. They seemed to feel guilty about the casualties they had been forced to inflict. "Sergeant Junho came to visit me while I was still recovering," Veltar said. He had been one of the human soldiers in the final battle. He wanted to apologize. Junho had felt bad about the Catherian casualties in his sector. Even though he was following orders and defending his homeworld, he regretted that people had died. He sat by my hospital bed and cried, Veltar said. Actually cried. For enemy soldiers he had killed in battle. This emotional vulnerability had shaken Veltar profoundly. He had never seen a soldier cry for his enemies, The concept was alien to Catherian military culture. Junho told me about human war philosophy, Veltar continued. He said they don't fight because they hate what's in front of them. They fight because they love what's behind them. The distinction was crucial. Humans didn't wage war for conquest or glory or revenge. They fought to protect things they cared about. Once the threat was gone, so was their reason to fight. He said humans would rather make friends than corpses, Veltar continued. But they're very good at making corpses when necessary. This dual nature was what made humans so terrifying. They could be utterly ruthless in battle, then completely compassionate in peace. The same people who had destroyed the Catherian fleet were now building hospitals for Catherian refugees. The integration process took 2 years, Veltar said. Humans helped us rebuild our government, our military, our economy. They treated us like junior partners, not conquered subjects. Catherian officers were invited to attend human military academies. Catherian scientists joined human research projects. Catherian diplomats participated in galactic negotiations as equals. They wanted us to be strong again, Veltar realized. Not as their enemies, but as their allies. This was perhaps the most alien concept of all. Humans actively worked to strengthen their former enemies. They shared technology, knowledge, resources, things that could potentially be used against them someday. When I asked General Borum why they were helping us so much, she said something I'll never forget, Veltar continued. Borum had explained that humans learned from history. They knew that humiliated, impoverished enemies eventually became problems again. Better to make friends out of enemies than to create future wars. She said the best victory is when your enemy becomes your friend, Veltar quoted. Not because they're forced to, but because they want to. The strategy was working. Most Catherians had developed genuine respect and affection for humans. Not fear or resentment, but actual friendship. That's what makes it so horrible, Veltar said. We can't even hate them properly. They won't let us. The judges were struggling to process this information. It contradicted everything they understood about warfare and politics. So the Catherian Empire is now allied with humanity? Asked the lead judge. More than allied, Veltar replied. We're friends, real friends. Our children play together. Our scientists work together. Our soldiers train together. He paused and looked at his artificial arm again. And that's the most terrifying thing about humans. They didn't just defeat us militarily. They defeated us morally. They proved they were better people than we were. Veltar turned to face the judges directly. You want to know why I'm here? Why I agreed to testify about the war? Because you're making the same mistake we made. The judges shifted uncomfortably. They had called this tribunal to investigate human war crimes, to find evidence of brutality and excess. Instead, they were hearing about mercy and kindness. You think humans are just another species, Veltar continued. Primitive, violent, predictable. You think you understand them because you've studied their technology and tactics. His voice grew stronger, more urgent. But you don't understand them at all. Humans aren't just another species. They're something new, something different, something better. Veltar stood up slowly, his artificial arm clicking as he moved. They don't conquer worlds. They liberate them. They don't enslave enemies. They make them into friends. They don't rule through fear. They rule through love. He looked at each judge in turn. And that's why they're unstoppable. You can fight weapons. You can fight tactics. You can fight armies. But you can't fight someone who genuinely cares about you. The recording devices continued running, but the formal testimony was over. Veltar had said everything he came to say. My advice to this tribunal is simple, he concluded. Don't fight humans. Join them, because if you fight them, you'll lose. Not just militarily, you'll lose morally. You'll discover that you're the bad guys in this story. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. And humans will forgive you for it. They'll help you become better than you are. And somehow, that's the most terrifying thing of all. The door closed behind him with a soft click. The judges sat in silence, staring at their notes. They had come looking for evidence of human war, crimes. Instead, they had found evidence of human virtue. And that was infinitely more disturbing, because virtue, unlike cruelty, could not be defeated. It could only be joined. The lead judge turned off her recording device with shaking hands. Around the table, her colleagues sat in stunned silence. They had expected to document human brutality. Instead, they had documented human compassion. What do we tell the council? Asked one judge quietly. The Zenthari judge stared at her notes. Pages of testimony about psychological warfare, technological superiority, and strategic brilliance. But underneath it all was a simple truth that changed everything. Humans were the good guys. We tell them the truth, she said finally. We tell them that humans fight wars the way we should have been fighting them all along. Outside the tribunal chamber, Veltar walked slowly down the corridor. His artificial arm clicked with each step, a constant reminder of the day he had learned the hardest lesson in the galaxy, that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one who refuses to be your enemy. He paused at a window overlooking the spaceport. A human transport was landing, carrying medical supplies to another world. Another former enemy that humans were helping to heal. Veltar touched his artificial arm one more time, then walked away. He had a meeting with human engineers who were designing better prosthetics for war veterans. All war veterans, regardless of which side they had fought on. Because that's what humans did. They healed the wounds they were forced to make. And that, Veltar knew, was why they would inherit the galaxy. Not through conquest, but through compassion. Not by making enemies, but by making friends. The human war front had been hell. But somehow, humans had made it into heaven, and that was the most terrifying victory of all.